On this episode of Low Budget Binge, expect festive sharks, train yard specters, mental illness, voodoo masks, Bruce Willis versus aliens, sort of, and special guest stars Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights, a part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. While you might be watching this video on the Kings of Horror Network, I urge you to click over to my ML Miller Frights YouTube page and give it a like. Please share with all of your buddies. Click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the paths less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, do-it-yourselves, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see in the usual Hollywood releases. I'll indicate in the review and down below where you can find these films, along with their trailers. Here we go. Breach, aka Anti-Life, is new on DVD, on demand, and digital download from Paramount Pictures. Directed by John Suits, and it's written by Edward Drake and Corey Large. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I saw a lot of press on Breach, touting it as Bruce Willis and Thomas Jane take on The Thing in space. But I should have known something was up when I saw the photoshopped cover. It's the 22nd century and we've screwed up Earth. The last shuttles for space are taking off, leaving the rest of the populace to die horribly. A gal named Haley, played by Cassandra Clementi, and her man Noah, played by Cody Kearsley, make it onto the last shuttle called the Hercules, piloted by Haley's dad, Admiral Adams King, played by Thomas Jane. Unbeknownst to Daddy, Haley is pregnant with Noah's baby, so while she goes into cryosleep, Noah works as a maintenance man on the ship and hopes to get on Haley's dad's good side. Noah gets paired up with an older, crustier maintenance guy named Clay, played by Bruce Willis, who's never too far away from his whiskey flask. As the bulk of the crew and the passengers go to sleep for a few million miles, a space critter that can shift and morph its form and possess anyone it comes into contact with emerges from the vents, and it's up to Noah, Clay, and a few others to take on the monster before it destroys the ship, its passengers, and steers it off course from New Earth. I'm sorry to say this is just bad stuff. It's obvious the top-billed characters of Breach were shipped in for a limited amount of time during filming, saw the production values of the whole thing, and they skittled out as soon as their shoot was up. Thomas Jane is barely present in this movie. He seems so disinterested and he can't even be bothered to take off his sunglasses in any of the scenes. Willis is in the film a lot more, but honestly, all he's doing is sitting around and taking slugs of whiskey every couple of minutes. Willis's character is supposed to have seen and done it all, but that can also read as someone who's simply hanging around until the check clears. Most likely, everything shot with Jane and Willis was used as there are scenes that feel pointless and don't really add to the story. Though you wouldn't know it from the trailer and poster, it's Cody Kearsley who's the star of this film as Noah. Haley is even asleep for most of the film, so it's up to Kearsley to do all the heavy lifting. And sorry, Moose from Riverdale really doesn't have the chops to do so. When you have wild cards like Thomas Jane and Bruce Willis on the bill, and your movie focuses on some other guy you don't know, you can't help but feel disappointed. Comparing this film to the John Carpenter classic, The Thing is another misstep. I wish it would have aimed lower. Maybe compare it to Dark Star or some other kind of lo-fi sci-fi film from the 80s. That might have been more appropriate. As is, the creature design is CG and bad practical. The possessed have black goo in their mouths, which look like they just bit into Pee Wee Herman's chewing gum, and the endless descent through the same hallways and corridors makes the film feel like every penny was paid for Bruce Willis and Thomas Jane to appear, leaving nothing for the effects, scenery, decent camera work, editing, script, the essentials. Ignore the posters and trailers and hype. This is a low-tier sci-fi with even less impressive special effects and action sequences. It's predictable and most likely not a film anyone involved would recommend. I'm sure better things are in store for everyone who played a part in this movie, but I just can't find much to say positive about Breach. The Hex, aka Hex, spelled H-E-K-S, is new on demand and digital download from Cleopatra Entertainment. It's directed and written by Rain Swart. When she witnesses her mother's murder on an online chat, artist/bartender Dylan, played by Coco Lloyd, travels to the place of the murder in South Africa with the African tribal mask her mother gifted her. Her death has ties to her mom's twin and a local witch doctor, and Dylan is determined to find out what happened and hopefully survive the experience as well. The Hex has pacing issues. Scenes go on too long past the point they are trying to make. There's also way too many jump scares that ultimately amount to false starts and forgettable moments. The filmmaker seems to have the Blumhouse method of scare tactics down pat, with a musical burst accompanied by a coming-at-you image every 2 or 3 minutes. There's also a weird way the film cuts between dreams and reality that makes for an unsettling watch. It's not like Dylan is sleeping when she's having these visions, but right in the middle of a scene, there's an ethereal chase scene with Dylan running away from some kind of monstrous pursuer in the jungle. It makes the film seem untrustworthy, as if everything is happening in a dream. One of the things I noticed in The Hex is that the attention seems to be on the relationships between Dylan and a hunky doctor, as well as the relationship between what looks to be the servants of the home Dylan is living in. It's fine to put some drama in your horror film, but that relationship drama shouldn't overshadow what the movie really is. This is a horror movie about South African witch doctors, spells, and cursed masks, but so much attention is spent on who is enamored with who's jealous of who, and who is arguing and confiding in who. That's not why people want to see horror movies. The relationship stuff feels more like clutter and filler than anything else, distracting what could be a more focused film about South African occult lore. There's a lot of potential in The Hex. It appears some money was put into it, as it seems to have been filmed in South Africa on some kind of plantation. The film does a decent job of plotting out a simple problem with the murder of Dylan's mother. While I'm not greatly familiar with South African folklore, it seems lengths were also taken to get the witch doctor's rituals right. The acting is decent, though none of the actors are gigantic standouts. The bare bones are there, and it seems to have been done with a capable hand by capable people. It just feels very unfocused, and uninterested in the scary parts, which is the reason anyone would want to see this movie in the first place. Santa Jaws is new on demand and digital download. It's also streaming on Amazon Prime and playing regularly on Sci-Fi throughout the holidays. It's directed by Misty Talley and written by Jake Kiernan. When aspiring comic book creator Cody, played by Reed Miller, receives a magic pen from his grandpa, he writes a story about a killer shark wearing a Santa hat killing his family. Turns out the story comes true, and the shark, all decked out in holiday decor, begins his murder spree. When Cody loses his magic pen, he scrambles to find it before his gory comic book comes true and his family ends up in the belly of a shark. Sci-Fi has been playing Santa Jaws as part of its holiday horror flicks. In no way do I think this is a good film, but it turns out Santa Jaws is one of those good bad films. Santa Jaws has terrible CG effects and even a worse-looking CG shark. The thing is, the shark, sporting a Santa hat worn at a jaunty angle upon its fin, wrapped in Christmas lights and later sporting a unicorn horn made out of a giant candy cane, looks goofy as hell, and I laughed at it every time I saw it on the screen, chomping down on the cast. It's the simple things in life that I find the most fun, and it turns out a shark with a Santa hat on its film is one of the more simpler pleasures I've come across in quite some time. The acting is actually not as horrendous as one might think. Reed Miller has a young Eddie Furlong circa T2 quality that makes for a decent protagonist to follow. The rest of the cast are equally capable, with scare packages Han Tran playing Corey's best bud, found footage 3D's Scott Allen Perry as a self-important comic shop owner, and the dinner party's Miles Doliak as a friend of the family. Unfortunately, the script isn't as goofy as the premise or as clever as it thinks it is. Much of the jokes fall flat and don't even register in the laugh-o-meter. Still, this is a straightforward, goofy-as-hell movie about a shark with a Santa hat on its fin eating someone about once every 10 minutes of the movie. Instead of the Jaws theme song, jingle bells are heard when the shark approaches. It's drawn out when the protagonists mix a bucket of chum made of ground-up Christmas cookies and eggnog. Santa Jaws is lowbrow cinema, but it's my kind of lowbrow cinema. Catch this goofy flick if you can this holiday season, and make it a regular for Christmases to come. Noise in the Middle is available on digital download and on demand. It's directed by Marcus McCollum and written by Glenn Cannon and Marcus McCollum. After his wife dies in a car accident, Richard, played by John Meese, is left to take care of their severely autistic daughter, Emmy, played by Faye Hostetter. Moving into a new house so she can be near a clinic that administers an experimental therapy, Richard and Emmy are hopeful that it will help with Emmy's increasingly impulsive behavior and Richard's waning patience. But it seems that the house has a sordid history and may contain some dark secrets, which does not bode well for this already troubled family. While it isn't radically scary, I found Noise in the Middle to be a fascinating film, mainly because of the use of metaphor. It's an extremely exhausting job taking care of an autistic child as severely affected as Emmy, and the film sheds light on all of the troubles that stem from it. Yes, this is a film about a haunted house, possession, and unsettled spirits, but it tells the story through the lens of someone overwhelmed with an afflicted child. Richard is a man full of faults in the way his life is depicted. One can't help but sympathize with him, having to basically spend every moment Emmy is awake following and caring for her. It requires a strength that not everyone possesses. While the haunted happenings definitely influence what's going on, there's a level of this film that can be viewed as a metaphor for the difficulties autism causes for an entire family. Meese plays this part well, as most of the film relies on him to communicate the heavy emotions because Emmy can't. Little Faye Hostetter delivers a fantastic performance as Emmy, depicting a truly innocent and troubled picture of severe autism. In both the leads' cases, they do a phenomenal job. In horror films, it's important to have an antagonist, be it a virus, a monster, an evil force, or simply a bad guy. So I understand the reasons this film makes Richard's flaws skew him towards the dark forces. Still, as I said earlier, Richard's feelings, to a point, are natural. Demonizing these feelings feels a bit unrealistic and unsentimental, as resentment, frustration, selfishness, distraction, hopelessness, desperation, and so on are all natural human responses to stress. I'm not condoning the behavior, but I'm acknowledging that they are reasonable feelings given the situation. Still, a story had to be told and conflict had to arise, so in terms of this story, it works as well as any. I think Noise in the Middle depicts the struggles of the parents of a mentally ill child with an extremely deft and sensitive hand. While I had a few issues with the way the story panned out, it is one of the few films that I've seen showcasing such a sophisticated look at this very difficult subject matter. For that, I recommend this film for those attempting to make sense of the curiosity of the way the mind works and how it affects some of those we love. Noise in the Middle works marvelously in that sense. Finally, we have Reeftown, which is new on-demand and digital download. It's also streaming on Amazon Prime. It's directed and written by Dutch Merrick. Out on a work release program from prison, Carrie, played by Brooke Bradshaw, finds herself walking the grounds of an abandoned train yard during the night shift to prove to her superiors that she is fit and responsible enough to reintegrate into society. Carrie's sister, who was released into the same program 2 weeks prior, has disappeared. As Carrie wanders the dark train yard, filled with abandoned locomotives and miscellaneous equipment, she uncovers the town of Reeftown's dark secret and hopes to survive the night. Reeftown is a small-budget movie that knows how to stretch its dollar, incorporating some well-integrated drone shots, nerve-shredding patience, and an absolutely terrifying atmosphere. Writer and director Dutch Merrick is able to achieve so much horror with so very little. If you boil this film down to basics, and it already is boiled down pretty much, it simply follows a woman around in a dark building using a small flashlight as the sole illumination. Every swish of the camera sends a jolt down the spine, due to the endless darkness surrounding the entire frame. Adding to the terror is the accompaniment of equally frightening sounds of a baby crying, miscellaneous machinery clanking, metal plates falling, and a minimalist score. All of it put together makes for a mood that is as tense as it comes when paired with the strong performance of the lead, Brooke Bradshaw. Bradshaw has more guts than most, though the terror is plainly shown on her face as she wanders the buildings, getting lost, and flailing for some kind of escape. Merrick succeeds in achieving a tone that most horror filmmakers dream of matching, utilizing patience, space, the shifting light, and slight sounds. Some might grow weary of the repetition of scenes that follow Carrie on her rounds through the train yard, but those who simply drink this film in for the potent dose of terror that it is will appreciate Merrick's firm grip on how to instill fear in the here and now. That said, I do think there are some missed opportunities at some solid scares as Carrie flashes her light around in the final moments. The suspense is ratcheted up to a breaking point, and I longed for a moment to release that tension. Still, it shows Merrick's fiendish side as he provides no release until that very last moment. Yes, this one has an ambiguous ending. I would have liked a few more answers as to how things ended up the way they did. While I wouldn't go so far as to say Reeftown has a happy ending, I think some of the upbeat parts could have been omitted to maintain the dire tone set in the movie prior. Still, Reeftown is simplistic horror at its best. It's a focused and potent dose of fear that is all-encompassing and a true achievement in low-budget horror. That'll be it for today. Please chime in the comments down below and let me know what you think of this video. How on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. If you like this video, please pound that thumbs up button. Share this video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on mlmillerwrites.com. Don't forget I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look for. Both Grave Trancers and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, can be found in only the finest of comic book stores right now. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for alerts to be the first to see my future videos. Thanks so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're